everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with your hosts. I'm Rex.
And this is your boy, Prack.
All right, and today's episode, we're going to deep dive into Deadpool and Wolverine. A movie came out July 26th of this year, and we were a little late to the party. We just saw it. But, all right, let's dive into it, Aaron. What do you think of this movie?
Well, first, I wanted to just say this is the debut of our new little soundboard. It's tasty.
That was beautiful.
Hell yeah. I mean, round of applause.
Oh my gosh.
But no, yeah, anyway, Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm pretty excited about it at the end of the day. I think as a longtime fan of the X-Men, it was really nice to see the debut.
Oh, you are going to nail it with this board, man. I swear. I swear.
Of Wolverine in the yellow suit, you know? I think
yes.
that was a great moment for a lot of people, and it pretty much, reaffirms the give people what they want, you know? They wanted that shit 30 years ago, and they were like, no, black suits only. And it's like, the whole thing about X-Men is that they're all individualistic, so...
Now, do you think back then it would have worked? Do you think they went with, it was a smarter move more, I would say, to go with the black, giving that comic book movies back then were harder to take off. Like most of them were kind of failures outside of Batman. And even Batman had some questionable ones. I
mean, yeah, given their restrictions of the time and they're not as inflated budgets as like modern, Marvel movies and
Absolutely.
DC movies. Yeah, they probably couldn't do that. But I mean, it's a staple, It's the first time we see Iron Man in the first Iron Man in the full get up. It's boner inducing, You're like, fuck. They fucking nailed it. And when you see Wolverine in this movie, save for maybe the mask. I'm not so sure how I feel with that. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't look horrible, but I don't think they nailed that part as much as they did just the overall Hugh Jackman aesthetic. Like, he looks great, but I don't know. I may not have been feeling the mask.
I will say the mask got me, but more specifically, it got me on the neck. I think that's where it all went wrong. It might be a really weird, small critique, but when I saw the mask, it was all right until you looked at him on the side, like from the side point of view, and this neck thing just didn't work. It made the connection from the suit to his mask seem a little more cheap. Where when you see Deadpool's, it seems like one unanimous piece, even though it's two. Same with Spider-Man. So I think just not having it look so conjoined, I guess.
That disconnect.
It just didn't work out. But the mask I thought looked great from a face point of view, maybe a little big. But I think it looked great. It might have been he didn't just grow his mutton chops out enough.
Right.
To fill that mask part to make it not look so big. Because, one thing about Wolverine is he's got big muscles, but bigger mutton chops.
Yeah, for sure. It's part of his look. That basically brings us to the overall plot of the story, though, and that's Deadpool having to go to extreme lengths to save his world by obviously tapping into now what will probably be remembered as like a nice buddy film between Wolverine and Deadpool. And I think I liked it. That was interesting,
I was scared when I found out it was a buddy movie. They work sometimes. And it's good when they do, but most of the time they don't. Aquaman 2, for example. That movie did very bad. I personally don't like either of the Aquaman movies, but I will say in defense of the first Aquaman, it made $1 billion. It was the highest grossing Zack Snyder DCU era movie they had. And to see the second one go the buddy route and then fail so horribly just kind of shows like if you can't nail it right, which Deadpool and Wolverine did for the most part for me, the movie's just going to flop bad because it's hard to kind of get two actors or an actor and actress who have that kind of cohesion to make that type of movie. Plus, the director has to know, the writers have to get it right. It's a whole thing that meshes, but when they get it right, it can be good like this. But this is my burning question for you about all this. How do you feel about them bringing back Wolverine? Like, for me personally, I felt that Logan was a perfect send-off for Hugh Jackman specifically. The character obviously could be recast, redone with the newer X-Men. They didn't even do it. They still kept Hugh Jackman,
Right.
which was cool. But, they still had that opportunity to recast him. But, like I was saying, I feel Logan was a beautiful send-off for him as an actor, as the character he played for 23 years. It was just an impressive way to go. But how do you feel about them bringing him back?
There's a couple schools of thought for me. One of them being, is Marvel creatively bankrupt? Do they have to rely on cheap parlor chicks to keep their franchise alive? Another one being the nostalgia kick of the last 6 to 10 years.
Absolutely. Yes,
of just fucking
yes.
Pumping that shit out. I liked it, but I'm not over the moon for it. Like, I think the movie was good and it hit the right points, and part of it is because it brought back Hugh Jackman. And let's be honest, he's pretty much one of the best casting choices of all time in the comic book movie realm. He seems to be born for that part, so I'm not mad at it. I just think, it might be time to rethink something, reinvent the wheel, because if we stop being creative with these things, we're going to run into this creative roadblock of we always have to rely on the past. And if we're not creating new memories and new memorable moments, how much longer is that going to continue? Because the callbacks that they keep doing are things we've seen 1,000 times, and we bring this person back and we bring this person back, and, it can be entertaining for so long, but there's going to be a moment in time where everybody is just sick of it. Maybe not this time, because fucking look at those numbers and shit with that fucking box office. Absolutely fucking killing that shit. So who am I to say?
I think you've actually nailed it right on the head for me, because I feel that not just Marvel. Marvel is just becoming a product of this decade's environment, I would say, because we are so built these days on remakes, remasters for video games, always trying to do callbacks to older times of yourself in music or, anything like that, because we as a people these days and as a generation look back at the past with such rose-tinted glasses that just like movies that were panned when they came out are so great now. Eminem kind of nailed it on one of his songs. It's Be Careful What You Wish For. He says, when he put out an album, the critics rate it 3 and then go back and re-rate it 3 years later and, call Eminem Show the Greatest. Because when they look back at it, it seems better than it was at the time. And I feel that's kind of happening now to a point where we're losing creativeness. And that's what's happening in Marvel, the nostalgia throwbacks. No Way Home from Spider-Man was an absolutely great movie. But I can't say it would have been better if they would have took out the nostalgia callbacks with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Or the outstanding performance of Willem Dafoe. It makes the movie great, but you can't build new movies off the past. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. We talked about the new Ghostbusters a while ago, and we talked about how not everything has to be a franchise, not everything has to have a sequel, not everything has to have all that, but instead make new ideas. Our last episode was Abigail. Abigail was a great original idea. It was based off of somewhat of a Dracula's daughter movie you told me about, but loosely.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So its own thing can still be great.
Oh, yeah. Some of the greatest movies of all time are borrowed, like Quentin Tarantino. He's just so influenced by past cinema that he just steals shit and he puts his style on it, and it's fucking, it's badass. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's his thing. And filmmakers should be able to do that throughout wherever, or musicians, or, new bands could listen to something from the past and build on that and be better. But I think with Marvel, they've backed themselves into a corner in a lot of ways, and now they have to rely on, I won't call it a cheap parlor trick, but they do. They're relying on things that they could just step away from, because the last, 3 or 4 of these multiverse movies, we've been basically fed nostalgia. Like, here's past X-Men, here's past Elektra, here's past Blade. And, I know Wesley Snipes is pretty attached to that role and doesn't want anyone else to play him, and that's what, he kind of alludes to even in the line in the movie.
I love that part.
I mean, no, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
It was beautiful.
Hell yeah, Wesley Snipes.
Dude, talk about shots fired.
Absolutely shots fired.
It was great. It was great. But circling back to this, given the nostalgia of this movie that they kind of ran on, how do you feel about the movie just overall? Do you think they did any sacrificing in terms to bring the nostalgia to the movie and to the fans?
Not for Deadpool, because I feel like Deadpool is that one character where you have so much freedom with him that you can be as outlandish or whatever, I mean, like, he doesn't need to be anything to be taken serious. Even the moments of the movie that you're supposed to take seriously and that are supposed to hit you a certain way, they break 30 seconds later when he's cracking a joke or breaking the fourth wall. So for me, it was everything I needed it to be. Like I said, it was entertaining, and the cameos were great, especially the Channing Tatum as Gambit. I knew about that going into the movie. I'd already had that spoiled for me.
Okay.
But I also had called it a couple months back. I was like, with the way Marvel is doing reactions to both, fan reception of things and actors who want to be in their movies, for example, in Multiverse of Madness, we saw John Krasinski as Reed Richards, which was like an internet rumor. And then in this movie, we'd known in the past that Channing Tatum wanted to be Gambit, but it never came to fruition. And then here he is. And not only is he here, but he's got the fucking accent down, and he's dressed to the nines, looking like my boy Gambit from the comic books.
Oh, dude, he was badass.
It was tight, dude. So, and I'm hoping this movie, the reaction from the fans and everyone, is just, the perfect opportunity to debut a Gambit movie and fit it into this multiverse thing they're so hell-bent on, doing. Which, by the way, the commentary and the constant slamming of everything Marvel and multiverse, I thought was pretty well played, because it's kind of cool. They can step back, make fun of themselves. They're having fun with it and shit. They're not taking everything so seriously that, all hope is lost for them. I think they still have an edge to them that a lot of people don't give them credit for. And I, for one, have said things about superhero fatigue, but they have aces up their sleeve still. And that's what I would call this movie.
So, do you think this movie would have done as well without Wolverine?
No. And the only reason I feel that way is Hugh Jackman is star power. He's had a lot of years to marinate. He is a much bigger deal now than he was before. And since they kind of capped his story off with Logan, we didn't really ever expect to see him again, maybe in cameos. But he's front lines here, so he's in the movie. And they also needed to reinvent the wheel a little bit, because Deadpool 2 was pretty lackluster. Deadpool 2 was, I don't know, it wasn't that great. It wasn't as good as the first one.
No.
And they've done a good job, all three movies, keeping a character like Deadpool really constricted into his smaller stories without getting too wild. And they were trying to go pretty wild here with what was her name? Cassandra.
She's
Xavier's sister, but what was her name? Cassandra something? Cassandra Nova. That's what it was. Yeah. It's got to be the first time where I've ever been like, damn, would a female Xavier give me a boner? She got me going.
Interesting. Like her shoulders gave me just the soft one. I wanted her to put on like a shawl, something that covered her shoulders. I don't know what else, but it was gross. So my other question to you about this is, how do you feel about all the other cameos? We had quite a few, and then one after that I want you to think about is, do you think this Marvel movie handled the villain better than others?
Yes and no, because that was kind of a misdirect, you know? We thought Paradox was the villain, which he was kind of, which was cool to see him, by the way. And I like kind of how they did it. But then to change the tide and have Cassandra Nova be the main villain, I did kind of like that, but it continues the trend of this faceless villain. And, you know, they need to outweigh each other. Like, we should have the people that want to root for the hero, but we should also have the villains be as brooding and, you know, menacing as our heroes, so that way we know how high the stakes are. Marvel movies always rush to that, like, all right, we're middle ground. Now I've got this plan to fuck everything up, and I'm gonna do it within the span of like 40 seconds. She walks through the portal, and now she's got this plan all of a sudden, and it's like, I don't know. Some of that shit is tired, and they keep doing it. And I would just really like to see, because Marvel has such a good array of villains that
they absolutely do,
and they do them kind of an injustice almost every time, unless you're fucking Thanos that had, you know, 20 movies to basically get everyone good and going for your movie. And that's how it should be if they're going to do that. And maybe they'll do that now for RDJ as Doom, because they almost have to. They got to right the ship from Kang.
I think they should have stuck with Kang. I think
just
Kang,
recast him. Yeah.
Recast him, or just stick their guns with Jonathan Majors. I liked his performances in Ant-Man, Loki, all them. He may not be the greatest person in the world, but I mean, I thought he did a good version of Kang, and the different versions that he's done showed just kind of a bit of a range of his acting. And for me, Jonathan Majors is kind of an unknown actor. So I wasn't too familiar with him at all. And then all of a sudden, Marvel had announced that this guy was going to be, you know, the big bad, and the next Avengers movies were going to be called the Kang Dynasty. So, you know, it was kind of exciting for me. And then, like I said, watching his performances in Ant-Man versus Loki, the TV show, you know, you saw the range. So I was kind of excited, because it was going to be a character that there were so many different versions of him that you'd have to have an actor capable of range. And no offense to Robert Downey Jr., but he just doesn't have the greatest range as an actor. He's a really good Tony Stark, but to me, his range isn't too fantastic. He has some killers like the Tropic Thunder, but like watching some of his other movies outside of Marvel, I just didn't.
I'm going to disagree.
Didn't care for him.
I'm going to disagree.
Oh yeah.
I think
no.
I think RDJ is capable of a lot of things. He's got that comedic timing and the comedic chops in Tropic Thunder. He's got the range of emotions in like The Soloist and Oppenheimer. He was fucking great in that
Oppenheimer,
movie.
he was good.
He was fucking crazy. Like, you almost couldn't even tell that was Robert Downey Jr. He felt more like, you know.
But even Robert Downey Jr., when he was doing Oppenheimer, he even goes on record and says that, you know, he was a little worried because he'd done Iron Man for so long. He wasn't sure he could play another character, and he didn't want to bring that kind of energy into Oppenheimer, which he did great. So he did, you know, do what he said he wanted to not bring that. But he's in a movie called The Judge, and I don't care for him too much in that one. When he was younger, I felt he was pretty good, but outside of Tropic Thunder and the Iron Man movies and his Avenger movies, I'm not a huge RDJ actor. Like his Sherlock Holmes movies are just Tony Stark in the 1800s.
I mean, that's not really fair because they're Guy Ritchie movies, so like he's just gonna try to be as Guy Ritchie-esque as possible,
That's true, and I mean, RDJ doesn't write the character, obviously, but he brings a certain spice with him. But it was just a spice that I felt was the same one he used quite a bit. Just kind of an arrogant character, and maybe that's just what he was typecast as.
Yeah.
I don't know all the things that go behind, him acting and choosing his roles. Back to what we were talking about, though, I do think Marvel has an issue with their villains. And I think Deadpool isn't an exception to that at all. I thought the villain was cool. She had a cool aspect to her. The fingers through the face, it added comedic value to it, with Deadpool especially. And it was kind of freaky, but
the whole sometimes you just ask, use your words or whatever.
Like there were some funny things about it, but it just wasn't. She didn't have a villain vibe to me, and I think that's kind of the Deadpool movies, though. Even the second one, that little kid was
the worst,
the villain,
but
he was just some whiny kid.
No, yeah.
And the first movie was pretty good with the villain, the guy that turned him into who he was, but. Again, a lot of these villains are just one-offs. Or if we see him again later on, it's not good.
I mean, I think that's what's great about Deadpool and Wolverine, though, is almost all of the Deadpool movies, well, there's only fucking 3 of them, but the 2 before this one, they feel like movies just made up from misfits and rejects from, the X-Men world. So there's so much more they could touch on that they don't really touch on. And I think he suffers for it. But with this one, they were like, we'll throw Wolverine in there. We'll have Blade come back. We'll have Gambit in the mix. They're misfits, but they're like A-lister misfits. We wouldn't even fucking have any of these movies if it wasn't for Blade. Because that's when Marvel, they took their chance and they were like, we'll dip our toes into this by selling all of our movie rights. Or the rights to the characters to be made in movies, and Blade was the first one. It was a box office success. Wesley Snipes was fucking badass in that movie. The sequel is badass. The third one is not as good.
With Ryan Reynolds.
And then there was that callback line to that too, where he's like, I don't like you, and he's like, you never have, because he played Hannibal King in that movie, and fucking Blade told him like, I don't like you.
He told him on set that I think he called him the white boy through the whole movie, but and weirdly wanted a sex scene with Jessica Alba, apparently.
That's
like
real
pushed for
fucking
that.
weird.
Like that's
who fucking wouldn't, dude. Like
I mean he's not wrong, but you don't just be like, what I think would make this movie so much better. A sex scene.
I could see myself uttering those fucking words in the future.
It would be hard not to, like you said. But the biggest surprise out of all the extensive cameos we got, and I mentioned this earlier because I couldn't keep it to myself, was Jennifer Garner's Elektra. Now, absolutely. If you want to talk about a hard-on for a superhero when you were a kid, I can't tell you how many times I watched Daredevil, the Kevin Smith one, just to watch that scene with her fighting the punching bag, listening to Evanescence.
Yeah.
I was hello.
Hell yeah. So.
But I was glad. It was a shock to see her out of all the people in there. And again, like I said in the last episode, if it's a movie or something I want to watch, play, or listen to, I stay away as best I can from trailers and everything. So even if there was a hint of her being in the movie, I didn't see it. But damn, even Gambit, like I was surprised he was in it. But when I saw her, I was like, no fucking way. My girl, the Garner, dude, is garnering up a hard on right now. Like it's fantastic. But no, it was a surprising one to see, and I really liked it. Along with the Toad from the X-Men. Yeah, from the originals, and then the Pyro from the X-Men, the original series.
Oh yeah, just old as fuck now.
Yeah, they're both old.
I mean, I'm old as fuck too, so no slight to that motherfucker.
Yeah, no slight of being old.
One thing I thought was interesting that I wanted to bring up was the director of this movie, Sean Levy. He directed Free Guy and the Atom Project, but also Real Steel, which means he's worked with both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds before. And I think that's actually pretty cool. Like, he's like, oh shit, I know both of these guys and I know their mannerisms kind of, so I can maybe get reactions out of them that will work playing off of each other because I work with them both, you know, and I kind of like that. Like, I was really curious who had directed that movie when we were walking out, and I didn't look it up until right before we started recording, and I was like, oh shit, I got to mention that. That's actually pretty awesome.
No, that is cool, and it probably helped with the cohesion of the movie. Just all three of them knowing each other from previous projects, and especially since Ryan Reynolds worked with him previously on these two movies, The Atom Project and Free Guy, recently. So I'm sure that helped a lot in recording this movie and getting everything kind of put together.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like you said, a lot of these cameos are A-list actors, so like the scheduling for that has to be so hard.
Oh, for sure.
To get them to come in, do whatever their, you know, million things they've got already going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, I was equally shocked by the Elektra cameo, so there's that aspect too. That director knew, like, I'm gonna have Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, so what kind of stakes can I raise to make you more shocked? And I think that Elektra was a good pull, and I think so was X-23. I mean, throwing her in there, I think they wasted her.
I did too. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was the next thing I was going to talk about. I think she did absolutely amazing as X-23, and in this performance, it seemed like she played the same character.
I thought it was fucking weak. I don't think she as a little girl, she had so much more emotion in the Logan movie and so much more anger, and she seemed more like the character, and this just seemed like she was phoning that shit in. She's like, oh, you want me to come back? Fuck it, I'll do it, but I mean, it's not going to be the same.
Well, see, I think differently. I think that she played it pretty good because she became kinder from the act of Logan, but she was still a badass and still the same person. She had her same backpack, the same putting on the ridiculous fucking sunglasses to whoop some ass with. Like, I mean, I feel her, like, acting, she still seemed cold. She didn't talk much, and she only talked to Logan really that one time, and, like, I don't know, like I said, it seemed like what Logan did for her made her a little kinder later on instead of so angry. Because she was so angry at, you know, everybody being killed, how she was treated.
For the, you know, the sake of the story, she works, but I just felt like the actress's performance was, I don't know, just left a lot to be desired. Especially when I mean, obviously you can't compare apples to oranges and say, well, especially when you look at Hugh Jackman's performance, because that motherfucker is just a great actor.
He is.
Like, he kills it in several scenes in this movie, and, you know, I know he gets his due all the time, but the dude's just a fucking legend. Like, you're gonna put him in the movie, and that means a lot coming from me, because we've had the conversation before, and I've told you before that I fucking do not like the Fox X-Men. I fucking hate it, and if that's shots fired to people, I get that shit too. But because I mean, I know a lot of people. Well, they were like, well, you know, X-Men was my first exposure to the X-Men, the movie, you know, the Fox one back in the day. And I get that, but I grew up reading the comic books and watching the animated series. So for me, the X-Men is, you know, the animated series really is my ideal lineup. And I just felt like that movie didn't really capture it. And I know not everyone feels that way, but So that's why I think it's a big thing for me to give Hugh Jackman that much credit, because he's a great actor and he's played this role for like 30 fucking years now, and he still finds ways to surprise. And I think he does in this movie. You know, I think he really stands out, even up against Ryan Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, another just no-brainer casting.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's almost like they're going to try to outdo each other, and they don't really do that. I think they complement each other well versus actually doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a few times where Hugh Jackman fucking Jack Nicholson's his ass. And whenever the fuck I say that, I mean Jack Nicholson versus Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men. You know, like
That's
Tom
harsh.
Cruise is the motherfucking main character, and then Jack Nicholson comes in and, you know, a couple scenes, and he just fucking
wrecks him, takes the show.
Yeah.
You can't handle being the star. But no, I actually have one bone to pick. I think the story they gave of what happened to the X-Men and how Logan fucked up his world was lackluster and fucking lame.
I mean, yeah, I can't disagree. It felt very underwhelming.
Stupid.
Because, yeah, I
Like,
can't stop
stupid.
hearing the screams. Like, what are you talking about? You're like an invincible being, you motherfucker.
I was fine with that, but he told us of what happened. A bunch of humans went hunting for mutants, and somehow the X-Men who fought Galactus, who have fought, I don't know how many superhumans, people got beat by an angry mob.
Yeah, but not the movie versions. You're thinking comic books. Like, we've never seen the X-Men take on anything that crazy.
But I assume this has to be some type of comic book version universe he comes from, because he's wearing the suit. And I mean, with the millions of multiverses, some of the comic books have to be real in one of them. And, you know, I'm not saying that, but with how powerful Logan is in Deadpool and Wolverine, it would just stand to say that, you know, Cyclops and Xavier and all the rest are the same, are just as powerful as they normally would be. So to get outnumbered by humans, it seems just, like I said, just lackluster and just fucking lame. Like, I thought it was going to be Logan killed them.
I mean, I think they already alluded to that in Logan, though, right?
So it was Xavier who killed him.
Oh, they changed it. Yeah, in the comic books or whatever, it's
Logan. Old Man Logan.
Yeah.
He did it because he got controlled, but no, I thought they were going to go with that in this because of the way he was acting about it. But then the story came out. I went and had a drink. I wasn't there. I came back and a bunch of humans overpowered some of the most powerful mutants in the world. And Xavier himself he could kill the whole world. In fact, he almost does in Logan. That's why they lock him away in that thing, because, you know, he's going crazy.
I mean,
so it just seemed stupid, especially with how much, like, you know, I was wanting to know the whole time, like, what'd you do? And of course, I probably built it up myself by thinking he killed them.
I am going to go ahead and flip the script on you, actually, and I am going to play devil's advocate on this one. Because Xavier is a pacifist, and his whole feud with Magneto is, we don't want to hurt the humans. We don't want to set a bad example for what mutants are capable of. And that is the entire back and forth dynamic fight between Magneto and Xavier. So if a bunch of humans rush in and they're trying to kill them all, I still don't think Xavier would pull the trigger like that, because it goes against his entire core belief system and what he teaches his team. And based on the things that this Elseworld Wolverine talks about, that his Xavier sounds like the true Xavier, the one that would never do that under any circumstances. So that's the only reason I bring that up. I think if we keep in mind their struggle, I think Xavier probably would just tell his team to stand down.
Would he let that happen at the cost of his team? Because Xavier is powerful enough to get into the mines and make them all leave without hurting them.
Yeah,
so unless something crazy happened and they got Xavier first, and if they did, the rest of the team would still fight to keep themselves alive or run.
Maybe, but
and
I think
you have Jean Grey, who could do the same thing, who's more powerful than Xavier can be. And my point is that humans are what killed them, not anybody else, not any of their villains, nothing. It was humans, which I understand what you said, but again, would Xavier sacrifice his school and his team, let them kill them just to prove that they're not dangerous and just to hold to his ideals? Like he loves his team and he loves humans, but I don't feel like he would let them or the kids die. I don't know if the kids died, but I'm just saying if they were home, that means they were at the mansion.
I think this Xavier would.
You think he would sacrifice his team?
I do.
And then
because that's the whole point of the fighting dynamic. Magneto and his team will sacrifice their lives to teach the humans a lesson, and Xavier and his team will sacrifice their lives to be pacifists. They only fight when they have to fight. They are not really about that shit. They're all about like mind control and learning how to use your powers for good instead of being unhinged assholes. And I think even under a human onslaught, they will not. I don't think they would hurt the humans. And the only reason I say that so strongly is because they chose to go with Yellow Suit Wolverine, and Yellow Suit Wolverine does come from that timeline with that exact Xavier, where it's like, I don't know. That's just me. That doesn't mean I'm right. That's just my interpretation of shit. And as lazy as I think it is, I think it has a place as an explanation, as a possibility, as, you know, what your imagination can do with it, which sometimes I think is what's lost in that type of shit. So
I think
I'm going to just be that motherfucker and say, like, nah, I disagree.
We're going to have to agree to disagree, because even if I don't think, and I'll agree with you that I don't think Xavier would want to kill anybody, but he had other options. Because like I said, between him and Jean, he can make them all think they're 3-year-olds again.
Yeah, but that's still using their powers in a negative way against humans.
But it doesn't hurt them. And if they defend themselves any other way, they will hurt the humans. But going into their mind and making them think that they just need to go home, or that they're 3-year-olds or something like that, can be fixed, doesn't hurt them. But having to actually defend yourself from a mob, you would have to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with you that I don't think that Xavier, probably from this Elseworlds or whatever, wouldn't let them hurt them. But I still feel like between him and Jean just alone could stop it without hurting anybody. I mean, and again, we don't know the world, so who knows what kind of technology they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, but just for me personally, I think that explanation was dog shit.
I mean, yeah, I can't slight you for that. Like, I can't. I pretty much have to concede that, yeah, they could flip the script and do that. And one thing I also want to take note of is this Wolverine was super powered. He was like, we saw the Fox Wolverine do some pretty serious
stuff,
damage,
yeah.
But nothing like this. This motherfucker was, when he throws Deadpool in their first encounter, it's clear that he is powerful as shit. So I really like that. I think that was a great idea, because that's what we go to see. That's what I go to see. I want to see my childhood heroes whooping ass the way I had seen them whoop ass in comic books, in cartoons, in my imagination, playing with my fucking figures as a kid.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and I'd read something about, I think it was like, no, I saw an interview with Hugh Jackman with Jimmy Fallon, like maybe a couple days ago, about, this movie and him being in it. And he was telling Jimmy Fallon a story. By the way, I just want to be mildly negative for a moment and say, fuck Jimmy Fallon. Fuck that guy.
Fuck
He's
that
not
guy.
fucking funny. How the fuck did he get a goddamn late night talk show? Like, I don't know. He fucking sucks. It's that fake, nice, I'm a fucking Hollywood personality, but I'm gonna be a dick behind the scenes bullshit. But
Yes.
anyway, fuck that motherfucker.
Anyway. Fallon.
Yeah, exactly. He's just one of those fucks. But I probably should just stop talking because he's rich and I don't want him to P. Diddy me. So, moving on. The interview was tight because Hugh Jackman was talking about how there was like a member of the production crew, and when he walked out in the yellow suit, the guy started bawling his eyes out because it's like, oh, I've dreamt of this moment since, I was a little boy. And that's what I mean when we started the episode, and I was like, they should have just done that shit to begin with because, it might have been harder, but they did it in a stylistic way in Batman, like you brought up, for 89 Batman, where he still looked awesome. It didn't necessarily look like his comic book counterpart, but it still looked like Batman, and I think that's what this Wolverine look is, and I think that's the biggest reason that I brought that up with Hugh Jackman there is, Jimmy Fallon had asked him and he explained that, and I think that sentiment might be felt by the whole audience. So
I think nowadays more so, but like I said, back when they did those X-Men originally, it was a lot harder to land those movies, where now they're so big and people love them so much that the throwback to that brings a lot more emotion than it did back then.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the times now, being quote unquote a nerd is more viewed as a good thing, where back then it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like those earlier times, you got called a nerd or a comic book guy or whatever, it was like, oh, no, I'm not one of those, or like, damn, that sucks. Like it's not a compliment. Where these days, like being like, oh, I'm a comic book nerd like crazy. People are like, oh, dude, that's awesome, man. What do you think of the new Marvel movie? All that kind of stuff.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think that's the difference these days than back then. Back then was a lot harsher towards that stuff.
I mean, that's true, but they definitely had their place, and some of those movies were just blockbuster fucking absolute marvels for the time.
Mm-hmm.
Batman, Christopher Reeve's Superman,
Yeah.
When they first did X-Men, Blade, like we talked about. They had their missteps still, like Ghost Rider and Daredevil and fucking Green Lantern. Like those were the era of starting to get better. But you got to walk before you can run.
Green Lantern, dude. Shout out to that. Like, woo! What a comeback. The worst comic book movie ever. All the way to Deadpool and Wolverine, man. Go to Ryan Reynolds. Good job. What a comeback.
Definite round of applause for pretty much everyone in that movie and involved in that movie. And I think, that's a step in the right direction. And I was very happy to see Disney not bitch out. They still had the blood and the gore. They still had the cussing. It was rated R.
Dude,
and I
crazy.
mean, I don't think you can put a muzzle on Deadpool anyway. If you do that, it's dead in the water. Just like we already know.
Yeah,
they tried that shit
absolutely.
before.
No, absolutely. When they, oh man. Again, shout out to Ryan Reynolds, man. Woo, he came back from the Wolverine movie as the dismal interpretation of Deadpool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely terrible. Like it's hard to really say how bad that movie as a whole is.
Mm-hmm.
Dog shit doesn't even come close to describing that movie. It's one of the black marks on Hugh Jackman's Wolverine history.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one thing I need to say to kind of piggyback off of that is, with Deadpool having to always be in a rated R scenario, I don't think one joy we will ever really see is him on screen with his X-Men buddies or his Avengers buddies in their movies. I think anytime we see Deadpool interact with one of them, it's going to be them coming to his movie versus, him making that Avengers appearance or that X-Men appearance. Because, again, you'd be putting a muzzle on him. unless you beeped him. You might be able to beep him and then write around the beeps to be kind of unique. But yeah, I don't see that happening, and I feel like that might continue to be their crutch. They're going to be like, well, Deadpool can only be in an R-rated movie, and we already used Wolverine, so in Deadpool 4, because, let's fucking be real, they're going to make a Deadpool 4, I'm sure of it. Where are they going to go with that? Who are they going to bring in? Because, like I said, it's been throwaway fucking cannon fodder people for Deadpool 1 and 2, and now we have Wolverine. So in part 4, who tops Wolverine? Who would you want to see a buddy, or maybe even a trio film? Throw another one in there just for the fuck of fuckery. What would you want to see?
I personally want to see a Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe movie. They have the timeline thing open. We've seen 50 different Deadpools. It would never happen, but I think it would be really cool to see that movie with Ryan Reynolds, his humor, and all the normal Marvel characters just coming back for these random one-off deaths.
Yeah.
Like, you see Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, dies. You see Captain Marvel. Who plays Captain Marvel? Brie Larson. Brie Larson. Have her come in just for that, dies. Have all of them come in for these quick scenarios, and he kills them all in just some comedic way on his quest to end the Marvel Universe. And I think it'd be funny and cool.
Yeah.
Never would happen, but that's what I would want to see. If they were going to do a number 4, I think that's where I would want to see it go.
I personally, and this may or may not be unpopular, I don't know, but I would like to see the Deadpool in love with death storyline. I think that would be cool, because that might make the excuse to do some of the things you want to see.
It would.
Like, he'll do anything for death, so she's like, go fucking kill the X-Men, and I'll suck your dick or something. I mean, obviously,
for him, that's exactly what would happen in that movie. But on your point to him not being in other movies due to his R rating, I think with Deadpool and the flexibility they could do, the beeping, if they do it right and write it right, would make it funny. Mm-hmm. And, obviously with Deadpool breaking the fourth wall constantly, he would make mentions of this. And I think it could work. Mm-hmm. They'd have to definitely navigate it very carefully, but I think beeping it would work.
Yeah.
If they wanted to bring him in on another Marvel movie as an appearance, like in Avengers, the newer Avengers, which, a little off subject, I do want to ask, how do you feel about the Russo brothers coming back to direct the Avenger movies? Do you think that's, again, another reach from Marvel to a past glory, or do you think that it is a good move that the Russo brothers will be able to pull another Infinity War Endgame scenario? Especially with going back to the drawing board without Kang, because I'm sure they write these in long form.
Oh, of course.
So now they had to readjust from Kang to RDJ's Doctor Doom.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever I'm asked a question like that, I love to go both routes in my head. So, the one school of thought is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They have a good track record of writing pretty high octane, pretty goddamn accurate comic book movies with good results, both fan reactions and money-wise. So, on one hand, it's a great idea. On the other hand,
absolutely,
people start to get too comfortable in those roles, and then they stop challenging themselves, and then, they might get lazy and direct the same movie 5-6 times. And since I have a certain stance on franchise sequels and, sequels in general for the most part, I don't really want to see repetition like that. But, if they had just brought John Carpenter back for some of the Halloween sequels, or Wes Craven for some of the Nightmare sequels, they might have been better. just pay them enough. Those guys walked away for creative reasons, and the Russos, they must have some aces up their sleeve if Marvel's willing to take a chance on them again. But yeah, I mean, I'm overall, after presenting both schools of thought, I probably would go more on the side of it's a good idea.
Interesting enough, I'm looking at the Russo brothers kind of directing credits, and there's not much. They did do The Winter Soldier, which is my favorite Captain America. But looking before that, I don't see much outside of TV series.
There was one movie they did that wasn't comic book related, and it was dope. I don't remember what it was, though.
They're shorts, pieces, most of them TV series. So, it's actually pretty impressive for them to go from what looks like mainly doing TV movies, TV series, to jumping onto the Marvel Cinematic Universe at such a pivotal point. Because I feel, when they hit the first Avengers, they kind of hit their stride, and then they hit Winter Soldier, they hit beyond that with all the other ones, and they were getting better and better. And then to bring on these relatively new directors, I would say, and then just what they did is impressive. Same like I said with that Abigail, the girl that played Abigail, impressive just for first timers, or being in something so big.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
It's an interesting dynamic too now with the way movies and people get their jobs, because before a lot of directors would start off with like music videos, really small bit parts, or television commercials, and now it's TV episodes, because television shows have really accelerated their acceptance in the world. Everybody, I mean, they were always good and popular for a lot of people, but now with the accessibility with streaming and that's just the overall longer period of time to tell a story arc, TV shows are a bigger deal now. And I think that's kind of a cool dynamic, especially for somebody like the Russos, or like we talked about with the Abigail video, Radio Silent. They'd only really done the Scream movies, and that movie I think it's called Ready or Not.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of that. I like to see up and comers, fresh fish, jump into the pond and take their shot at it, and then be successful, because then it opens the door for better stuff in the future. But having said that, I just remembered what movie that they had done, and actually I wasn't that pleased with it, and it was called The Gray Man. I think it was for Netflix.
Yeah, that's a more recent one, actually.
Yeah.
It's that one came out 2022.
Yeah.
But
I didn't hate it. It failed to deliver for me.
So not every director's got a perfect rap sheet. I don't know if any do, but
I don't know, man. I think a couple of them got pretty fucking close. Like, we got David Fincher coming up in a couple of weeks.
We do David Fincher, besides Alien 3.
Alien 3, which he himself denounces.
But he still directed it.
Yeah, but it's different because studio pressure, making them change your vision. And he talks about doing that movie and how much he wanted to just fucking quit all the time, because he wanted to do these new things that the franchise had never seen. And fucking, it might have been fucking Fox at the time. I think they owned it. And they were, giving him shit and telling him to change things and then edit things out and then trim things down for the better rating. And eventually, as an artist, that takes its toll. And we heard a similar tale from Sam Raimi with Spider-Man 3. And that's why that movie is so fucking hated, because he had all these cool ideas and Sony was like, no, fuck that. We want you to do this. We want you to cram 3 fucking villains into the movie. And I just think he kind of just did what he thought he could do with it, which was more of a fuck you than people really pick up on. But it sucks, You're an artist and you have a specific vision and you're stoked when you get the job. And then you gotta fucking listen to all this bullshit. Yeah.
So much red tape.
And Rob Zombie is another one. He talks about the Halloween remakes, and he wanted to do a lot of different shit. And John Carpenter even told him, do what you want with it. But instead, he still had to fucking take shit from the suits, the guys that don't want to lose on their investment, and it just fucks shit up,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that studios need to take a step back and let them do their thing. And that's the only reason that I bring that up for David Fincher, because after that dude does not miss. And it might be rare, but I would just say in terms of a defense, like, I don't think it's impossible per se. Because again, Tarantino is another person for me that everyone loves Tarantino, but I've loved him since I was a little boy, like for real. I got Reservoir Dogs on VHS when I was super young, and I loved that movie and its dialogue and shit. And then Pulp Fiction obviously became a cultural phenomenon, and everyone loves that movie. And I think from there he catches a pretty good stride.
Yeah.
Death Proof is probably arguably his worst movie to some. For me, it's Inglourious Bastards. I just don't think it's one of his best. But anyway, would I call it shit? No. So I don't know. I think there are those directors out there, I guess. Long story short. Fucking talking like I own this.
So one other question I had, and one thing that I'm not too sure on, is they ditched all their classic characters for these cameos.
Well, I think that stems from Fox being done, and they want to show us that they're done with it and they're ready to move on to and Deadpool and Wolverine in general. The whole fucking movie is like the audience's thoughts probably on the movie they're watching, told metaphorically through the whole fucking movie. Like even Ryan Reynolds saying like, "Oh, I had to dig up a fucking dead Wolverine to help me get this going." In my head, as that was happening in the movie theater, I was like, yeah, they're digging up an old character to fucking throw him out here. But I mean, it's clever writing. And you can say what you will about Marvel, but they're clever still. And look, they can't all be zingers. Shout out to Primus. But they can't, not every fucking thing you do is going to be good. You got to take the good with the bad. And, Marvel's had some missteps recently, but I think they're trying to right the ship. And they may not see the exact same success as before, but I don't know. These fucking numbers would say otherwise for Deadpool and Wolverine. So
Deadpool and Wolverine though is kind of a one-off. That's one thing that is interesting about this, is that they do have the ability to still make great movies, and like you said, the numbers say Deadpool and Wolverine are a hit. So is it going to be enough? Like, they can't, obviously this movie ties into other things, but it doesn't progress anything that Marvel has going on.
I don't think it's supposed to.
I mean, no, it's just one of these one-off movies, but again, that's not the core of Marvel. Are these movies going to have the same success? I mean, Wakanda Forever didn't make it. Ant-Man Quantumanium didn't make it. These shows have been steadily declining. With the next one we have coming out is Captain America Brave New World, and that's going to be the first movie after Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be in the original timeline that we're following
right
so far in this phase. I'm not sure where Deadpool and Wolverine fall in this phase. Are they part of the new, or are they part of this last phase that's ended? I'm not sure, just because, like I said, the movie in terms of story doesn't progress anything going on in the Marvel world. It just kind of shows some changes. Like it's definitely placed after Loki season 2, because the TVA is now changed.
They fucking referenced it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so like I said, nothing's progressed, so I don't know if it's even part of a phase at all.
I don't think it is. I mean, I think I agree with you. It's a one-off, but all the Deadpool movies are one-offs. I mean, before they couldn't connect the first two because the rights hadn't been settled. But now that he's, like I said, you have to contain Deadpool, because if you allow him to run amok in your universes, you can't rate all your movies R. You're
No, you
going
can't.
for that, and I'm not saying you can't necessarily do Deadpool without doing that, but you fucking can't. Let's be honest. You can't have him censored other than we talked about maybe the beeping, but you just can't. You got to leave him the way he's supposed to be. It would be like taking the darkness away from Batman. You just can't do that. So I personally think that, it's probably a one-off, which is why the decision was made to make it a buddy film. And, I think it's smart in terms of nailing at least a solid Deadpool trilogy, even though I don't personally care for the second one all that much, but mainly due to the villain, we talked about too. That villain's just kind of lackluster, but I still like the movie overall. I'd say it's a solid trilogy, which is good. And I think that was probably their intention, because they also know that feedback is their trilogies that they do within the confines of these phases are not always solid all three times.
No.
Captain America is the closest. And I know how you feel about the first one.
Captain America 1, my friend.
Yeah, I don't
that movie.
For me, that's just straight up because it's one of the ones that starts it all off, and I think it's necessary.
Necessary, but not good.
I think it's pretty good, dude.
I don't like it. Hey, vegetables are necessary, but most of them ain't good.
I get it. I still think whether you love it or not, it's still one of the best trilogies there. Because Winter Soldier is great, Civil War is great, and I think you could almost cohesively just watch Captain America 1, 2, and 3 without watching all of the other movies, and it would still be cool. I realize the third one would probably make the least amount of sense because it has all those
what
people.
What happened?
But I don't know. I mean, I think one thing I always want to bring up when we talk about comic book movies is the comic books are like that too, though. Mm-hmm. You can be reading an issue and Hulk will just fucking walk into the next frame and you're like, oh, fuck yeah, Hulk's here. It's I don't feel like you always need the explanation of why everyone's there. If a cameo wants to be a cameo in the Marvel universe, where 500 random fucking mutants and superheroes are a thing, I think we shouldn't question it as hard, So that's, I guess, to me, why Civil War could be watched as a standalone movie without worrying too much about it. But
I think Iron Man would probably be the most solid trilogy in the Marvel. Because, I mean, in honesty, I think Civil War is okay. It's not my favorite at all. I don't care for the first Captain America, but Winter Soldier, I think, is one of the strongest Marvel movies. I really like that movie a lot.
Yeah.
Iron Man series, though, I like 1. 2 is probably not the greatest, and I really like 3 outside of the Mandarin. But I think it's a really good trilogy. Thor's out the window. Thor was a lot of downhill, and then one really shot up and then back down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess it's not a trilogy anymore. What is it called now when there's 4 of them? It's
quadrilogy.
A quadrilogy. I do not even like to say that. Quadrilogy.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous.
Sounds like a disease.
Mm-hmm. Something you need to go see your doctor for. Got a fucking mad case of a quadrilogy, and
it's why Thor sucks. He's got a quadrilogy problem and a Taiki Waititi problem.
That guy just, I don't know. He thinks he's so much fucking funnier and badass than he really is, and he just... Jojo Rabbit's great. I like that movie a lot, but he got lucky with Ragnarok. I think it was just a case of new director hired, needs to prove himself, fucking lays down the gauntlet, and then Love and Thunder, he fucking misplaced the fucking gauntlet, and he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And he's just like, look it, I'll go the full 9. And again, I don't know. I don't know what's fucking happening behind the scenes. Maybe those motherfuckers are doing the same thing. Though I feel like Marvel is not as restrictive, other than...
You got to follow certain guidelines. But here's the thing, too. Kevin Feige's involved in all of it, and he deemed Thor, Love and Thunder to be good.
Well, I mean, you can use that argument for all of them. You know, I mean, he deemed all of them necessary. And then we get into the Ant-Mans, and it's like, he doesn't even need his own fucking movies. I love Paul
right.
Rudd. That
Yeah,
man's
me
a
too.
goddamn national treasure, but I fucking,
He is a sweetheart.
I'm not about to sit here and humor that everything he does is good.
No.
Because he's just Paul Rudd and everything. I mean, and if you see Frozen Empire,
Sucks.
movie is a fucking... I'm
Trash.
sorry. As a huge Ghostbuster fan, movie pisses me the fuck off.
Not even Paul Rudd could save that movie.
Nobody could save that movie. And we might even have to do a deep dive on that one, because I take that shit personally. I don't know. Like, because I'm not, without even just getting into Ghostbusters, just in general, if you're going to make a legacy sequel and you deem it necessary to build a new foundation around something that was there once before, don't rely on that exact shit the next time too, because the problem with that is, I get it, right? Like, to re-spark that interest, do it if that works for you. Like, the New Hope fucking contrast with whatever that pile of shit was called, The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens.
Like, okay, you might use nostalgia to your advantage to jumpstart something and reignite, and I'm cool with that. But the next time, raise the fucking stakes. Do not mesh things that don't need to be meshed together and try to hope that they work. And then also don't fucking go off on like 50 storyline tangents and not have any of them really pay off. And that hones back to Deadpool Wolverine even. It's a very contained story as usual for Deadpool, and for a sequel as a part of the Marvel Universe. Like I said, it spends a lot of time ripping on Marvel for its stupid shit, its bailouts, its nostalgia pulls, its multiverse shit. And that's the Deadpool way, but it's also, again, it's smart of Marvel to stand back, assess themselves, and just kind of, like I said, lay down the gauntlet. Yeah, not everything we do is good, but we're going to do this. If it lands, cool. If it doesn't, back to the drawing board, like you said, and try something new. They shouldn't be afraid to try new things. That's my point. Overall.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't be afraid to try new things, but they also need to learn when to stop doing something and create something new, rather than like what they're doing now. Mm-hmm. They were trying something new with this new phase, this new era of superheroes up to the big 2 movies they'll do for Avengers. Mm-hmm. And they've stumbled this whole way, so now they're abandoning their new idea, and instead of creating something new again, they're reaching back to try to do the lightning trapped in a bottle twice sequence with RDJ.
Right.
And I think that is going to be a misstep, because even the reception of it wasn't as big as they'd hoped. Because although everybody loves him and loved his role, everybody can kind of see through the curtain on this one. Mm-hmm. Like, this was just a grab because of what happened with Jonathan Majors, and like nobody was sure what's going to happen with the next movies, who's going to be the big bad boy. Yeah. So, I think,
to me, it's a misstep to start with Thanos, because now you have to top Thanos.
Yeah.
And Deadpool, again, like you said, it does nothing to add to that. So we're going to be relying on Fantastic Four, X-Men, Captain America, whatever TV shows are peppered in, whatever bullshit is peppered in that I ain't watching anyway. So I'm over it, dude. Like, I don't have the superhero fatigue. I'm still Team Marvel. I'm not that person that's like, fuck them. Because a lot of people are. Even some of my close friends are like, fuck them. And I'm like, I get it. I can't say, like, I don't understand. I completely get it. 22 fucking movies, 23, to tell an entire story that you only get microscopic doses of what's going on through each movie. You got to sit through a lot of questionable content that isn't really that good. You got to be introduced to characters you don't give 2 fucks about, but you're supposed to care all of a sudden, because if you don't care, then you'll miss 50 other storylines. it's exhausting for people. I fucking get
Absolutely.
it.
I'm getting exhausted listening to that.
Yeah. No, but that's basically their, what they've been doing. And the TV shows to me are just too much. It's like
It's way too much.
it's got to stop at some point, and they got to just go back to like the 3 movie a year thing. And if they want to do a show, maybe like one a year or one every other year, and make it fucking count, because some of that shit to me is just, it might have its fan base, it might have, everything does, everything
Yeah.
that a major studio like Marvel or Disney does is going to have that group of fans that's dedicated to it and they like it, like Moon Knight.
Absolutely.
Like we were talking about on the way, I liked She-Hulk. I thought it was all right, but only again because it appealed to my comic book notions. It felt like a comic book, but I don't really give a shit about She-Hulk. I like her as a character, but I mean, was I chomping at the bit for a fucking She-Hulk show, movie, anything? Fuck no.
I don't know anybody that was.
No.
But,
And I mean, she might. It's that there's definitely a fan base for it, but
I hope they slow down on the shows because the movies are a lot easier to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
But once you throw in 10, 8-episode shows, it becomes a lot harder. And then a lot harder to remember everything. And then to go back and rewatch it to get ready for like the end of the Avengers is just a daunting task.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
It's just I don't think it works out well. I think it's cool because they can tell a more expanded story and maybe actually flesh out their villains better rather than how they kind of rush them in their movies now. But like again, at the same time, sometimes it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
Putting out so much content doesn't make it good.
No, yeah.
It doesn't keep people around because as you've seen, Deadpool and Wolverine came out and everybody's gone to see it. We saw it tonight. It's a Sunday.
Still
That
packed
place
as fuck.
was packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was packed. And everybody, I'm sure, was there to see Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
A few people were there to see something else. But, but the point is that the right superheroes and the right stuff will bring in the draw. But if you put out a bunch of crap about a bunch of characters that nobody gives a shit about, it's not only going to cause fatigue, but nobody's going to want to pay attention to everything. And then the real impact of these new Avenger movies when they come out, I feel won't be so impactful. Like there won't be a death as powerful as Tony Stark's or Black Widow's because people won't have that connection like they did before because there's so much now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing for them to overcome.
And they might rely heavily on killing characters off, which we touched on briefly in the last episode.
Yep.
You don't got to fucking kill characters off, and I think movies do it too much, and it's because of that expectation that the stakes need to be raised.
Yeah.
And I get that, but Batman '89, we kill the Joker. Batman Returns, fucking Penguin dies. And when you kill off the character, you're putting yourself in a box to
Yep.
me. And if you want to use him down the line, that's why these comic books create prisons, for their supervillains. We got Arkham Asylum in Batman's world, and we got what is it called in Spider-Man's world? It's like it's that jail.
The one in the ocean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Marvel one. I can't remember what it's called.
It's got like a basic ass fucking name.
It does.
But
It does. But I know what you're talking about. They
Yeah.
show it a little bit in the movies.
yeah, just do that. Like their whole job is to stop evil, not kill the fucking villain, and it's not always them killing them.
No, but just circumstantial. They die or just, and you're right. They do comic books, and now consequentially the comic book movies have boxed themselves in where they have to have a multiverse.
Right.
And here's the thing with this multiverse, I'm afraid they're going to try to bring back some sort of Thanos version, like,
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
because they already did.
Yeah.
The start of the multiverse basically happened in Endgame
Yeah.
because it was a multiverse Thanos that had come down.
I think I saw someone break it
Or
down.
no, it was a back in time one. I apologize. It was a back in time one.
Yeah.
But
there's like 3 Thanoses at the same time or something.
it's interesting.
You know, the
but
fucking
still,
Back to the Future bullshit. Like,
yeah, but still,
confused in the mix.
The point being is that, they do box themselves in, so they have to create this multiverse. But then it's like you said, these big comic events become kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Like, it's good they didn't bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. I think it's a bad move they brought him back as Victor Von Doom. I think the better middle ground would have been the variant of Tony Stark as Doom.
Right.
I think that would have just been a better, more realistic middle ground to this multiverse thing they have, where now this RDJ is going to be, I don't know, who knows what universe yet, but he's going to be from the 60s with the Fantastic Four. So whose world are they going to be a part of? Because if he's going to be the overarching villain, he's got to be somebody.
Right.
Or maybe he's nobody. Maybe that's the point.
It's hard to say.
Our version or our main universe 616 doesn't have a Victor Von Doom or the Fantastic Four, so maybe that'll be kind of the more daunting thing of him as a villain. They've never seen anybody like him.
Yeah, I just think if you're planning out a big saga like this and you're gonna have big bads keep coming into the picture, you got to gauge their power. Like Doom, he becomes like Emperor Doom, gets the Infinity Gauntlet, all kinds of crazy shit. He ain't nothing to fuck with, honestly. And I think he maybe should have been the middle villain after we had started with like Galactus. Or well, maybe no. Galactus is pretty wild because he just fucking eats planets and shit.
Yeah, he's like.
But you know what I mean, like build up to it. So we started with Thanos, and if you're gonna top Thanos, Doom is definitely a logical choice for the next step because Galactus is obviously gonna be introduced in the Fantastic Four because we know that already, and he's been teased a little bit.
See, and that's something I'm worried about too. Is Galactus is a Thanos-sized villain, but is he going to be just one-offed in the first Fantastic Four movie?
I don't think so. I think they'll lay the groundwork for him to be a big bad because he's got to be.
But then why would they make Victor Von Doom the big bad?
Because there is a timeline where Doom is one of Galactus's fucking whatever the Silver Surfer has a name. His heralds. He has a herald. Doom, I believe. Don't quote me. Like we fucking talked about last time. We're old. I'm old anyway.
I'm old.
And I'm trying to fucking memorize shit from 30 years ago, and I may be off, but I'm pretty sure Doom in one story or another was one of his heralds because he's had multiple. He's had all like 8 or 9.
So then it would have to be a misdirect.
It's possible.
I mean, because
it's very possible.
I mean, if they lay the ground, now here's the thing, they could lay the groundwork for Thanos to be for Galactus to be a 3-part overarching villain for the trilogy of Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
If they do 3 movies within the timeline, which is I think 2026, as they said when they're going to do the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know. I just hope that they don't use Galactus in some cheap way where he's gone after the first film.
Yeah, no, I get that. We don't want to waste him.
Exactly, because like I said, he's like he's a Thanos-sized villain. He's one of the powerful ones.
Thanos is one of my favorites, so I'm already pretty satisfied in that realm. But with X-Men being introduced, and Marvel hasn't done a spin of on Apocalypse yet. Only Fox did, so we still have him, who is the first mutant. So they could do a lot with that, and I don't know. I'm excited because for me, being excited about a Marvel thing again is a AAA IP, and that's going to be Fantastic Four, and that's going to be the X-Men, which I grew up with both of them, so it'll almost complete the pieces for me having them nail the Avengers as well as they did, because even if a lot of the middle ground movies can be sketchy here and there in terms of quality, the overall Avengers unit was well done, both visually, storytelling. I think they did a great job.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see them bring it full circle. And obviously, as a kid, Avengers wasn't as a big deal to me because everybody's under this impression the Avengers were always popular, but they fucking weren't. Like, Marvel had to push them more into the forefront when they had to start selling off the rights to certain things or for money when they were going through bankruptcy. So when they lost X-Men and they lost Spider-Man, they kind of realized they fucked up, so they had to go ahead and push, Cap and Iron Man and Hulk, because those were not massively selling titles. They weren't horrible for them, but they were that middle ground because we already had Spider-Man, who was a big deal, and we had X-Men, who were a big fucking deal, and we had Fantastic Four, and they sold those three. So
interesting, they chose Captain then to be the leader.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was the leader in the comics and shit. And don't get me wrong, they had their following, but it was just like everyone believes the Avengers was this big deal, and even when I was younger, and I've seen people older than me say it too, that like the Avengers weren't that big of a fucking deal. They're like you read those while you were waiting for new issues of X-Men or fucking Fantastic Four. Like they weren't fucking like, I don't know, they weren't as big of a deal as they are now. They did, and we can hone back on that real quick and say, yeah, I don't care about all these off-branch characters, but then they brought in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they made me care about Guardians of the Galaxy, which
Absolutely.
I'm not a super nerd here. I'm not saying I even fucking knew who they were when I was a kid. I didn't. They existed in a different form, and I learned about them later after the movie introduced me to them. But I'm happy, is my point, that they did that, because I love the fucking Guardians. I think this incarnation is cool. And then I went back and read some of the comics after I found out about them with Star-Lord's crew and then the original crew. And I think they're tight. I think they're maybe a kind of a slept-on title. And for that alone, yes, introduce us to new stuff, but be selective. I think there's been some missteps. Like, I fucking don't care about Moon Knight. Nobody gives a fuck about Hawkeye.
I don't give a fuck about Ironheart. I really don't know what's going to happen with that.
Ironheart, yeah. I mean, my only issue with shit like that is don't rehash shit. If you're going to come up with a new hero, do it. Ironheart is just Iron Man again. We already know that. We know what the suit is capable of. We know the limitations to the human within the suit, and like, let us explore new territory, That's
and why does there have to be an Iron Man replacement? Like you said, make a new character, or pick just a different character that you can bring to life, like you did the Guardians. But there doesn't have to be a replacement for Iron Man.
And sometimes people don't even respond well to it. Like they tried to do that with Captain Marvel, and then everyone fucking cried. And I don't think that movie's that bad. I don't think it's that good. But I think Brie Larson is a good actress.
Getting through that movie a few times.
It's a misstep, but it's not for me. It's not because Brie Larson sucked or anything. I just think they chose. Blame her. Yeah. Well, I mean, she caught so much shit for that movie, and maybe some of it was like her attitude, But I don't know. I guess for the future of Marvel, I will leave it at this thought. I am happy to see what they do, and I'm excited for a couple projects. Thunderbolts or Thunder Twats, whatever that shit is.
Fuck David Arbor. David Arbor is in it, so fuck that. I'll watch it.
It's a movie about villains, It's like Marvel. It'll be like Marvel's take on Suicide Squad, which, you know how I feel. I fucking hate both of those movies, but maybe this one will get it right.
Fuck David Arbor. That's all I've got to say. Fuck David Arbor. I do not care. I'll watch it and hope that he'll die. If we're lucky. If I'm lucky.
That, if anything on this digital board needs to get hit, it's shots fired, because
take it all day.
David Harbour is a capable actor. He just I think he
sucking.
Chooses shitty roles. I think he chooses roles that he's not good for.
He should have stayed dead in Stranger Things. It was a great moment.
Spoilers.
Absolutely fantastic. Just like when Tom Holland passed away in Avengers Infinity War at the end. Mm-hmm. Mr. Stark. Oh man. When he just floated away, I laughed. I laughed. Yes. 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 Outside of his new movies, I think Tom Holland fucking sucks as Spider-Man.
I don't think he's that great in general. Like,
yeah, I agree.
He's fit, like the Uncharted movie. That movie fucking sucked too, dude. Like, especially now when we're actually nailing video game movies. Uncharted was just fucking what.
Well, shit! Look at the Michael Fassbender's Assassin's Creed movie. The fuck was that too?
Yeah, I mean, man. I never saw it.
No.
Oh,
man.
I don't care enough.
Lucky guy. lucky guy. Like, I don't know who. I like Michael Fassbender a lot. But
he's a great actor.
I think he's great, but yeah, that was a misstep too. But
yeah,
no.
They can't all be zingers. Like I said,
can't.
Yeah,
I'd rather watch. Who would I rather watch than David? Probably anybody. I'd probably rather watch Kevin Bacon than David Arbor.
This Kevin Bacon hatred
and
this aggression will not stand, man.
A Few Good Men. He was pretty good in that.
I think he's great in a lot of movies.
I mean, he was the third good man, but that's it.
Kevin Bacon's a legend, dude. Like, especially recently too. He's pumping them out. Like, he was in Maxine. He was in the new Beverly Hills Cop. Like, he was the villain in that movie, and predictably, because anytime you see him in a trailer, you're like, he's probably the fucking bad guy. But I don't know. I like him. First time I ever saw him was well, not the first time, but Tremors, the movie Tremors, the horror movie. Not a great movie by any stretch of the means, but you got to start somewhere. And I mean, Friday the 13th was later for me, so I saw that a few years later. But I don't know. Bacon gets too much hatred.
I'd still watch him over David Arbor. David Arbor can suck it. His Hellboy was lame.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. I know some people like it, some people don't.
I just recently watched the Black Widow movie. Took me a long time. Not because I didn't want to watch it, but just never got around to it. But I finally did, and again, David Arbor.
They did ScarJo dirty in that movie, dude. Not even just David Arbor, just that movie.
Yeah,
bad
movie
timing, bad story.
Yeah,
she deserves better than that. She's a great actress, and she lent a lot of her time and efforts, and
she sued them over that movie because they did her dirty there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Disney was just trying to do her dirty.
They need to be better about doing right by female characters and actresses, because it's not all a man's game. I've always been a huge fan of like strong female leads. I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
See, I feel they did the same though to Mark Ruffalo. Well, I think Mark Ruffalo should have got his own Hulk movie. I think him and Scarlett Johansson should have got a fucking movie long before Ant-Man did.
Yeah, but they had 2 failed Hulk movies. I mean, failed is strong for...
The first one was so long ago, though. Like, that one's not even in most people's memories. They more think of Edward Norton's.
Well, his is part of the Marvel Phase timeline.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so...
That's what's good, but, like, you can't use Edward Norton because he's a prima donna ass motherfucker. He'll make that movie his own. Just like he did in fucking American History X.
He sure did.
But he's a great actor, but it's like we were talking about with Jimmy Fallon. You fucking be fake, and everyone thinks you're a stand-up guy, and then it comes out that you're kind of a douche, and sometimes it's not surprising if you're fucking Kevin Spacey, even though he seems like he was kind of a douche. But
touching kids, yeah.
Just fucking
little
people,
boys,
fucking little people,
little Jared boys. But
overall, the movie, I think it landed where it needed to land for me. So, getting back to the final thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine, I'd say it was a good time. It was a good third one in the franchise. I enjoyed the performances of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, and I think the writing was pretty sharp, as it usually is for at least Deadpool. And obviously pretty good for Hugh Jackman to get those good fucking touching scenes in there and just show off his chops once again. So for me, 7 out of 10, 3 out of 5 for those who use the out of 5 deal. But those are my thoughts on that for show.
I'd say a 7 feels kind of low for you. I feel like you would have rated this a little bit higher.
It's just a couple things. Like, I thought it had great music, and I thought it had great moments, and like they said, the performances were good, but where I think it might not hit the mark is just that story. You know, the story's pretty lackluster at the end of the day, and it's another time multiverse manipulation thing, and I think that aspect is a little bit tired, and that's probably where I would dock it a full point, because it was probably going to be about an 8 or maybe 3.5 stars out of 5, but because of the story that I feel like I've seen a billion times at this point, I'm going to dock it just a smidge for that.
I give it a 7.5. The movie made me laugh. Like, that movie was undoubtedly fucking hilarious.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
So many parts of that movie were absolutely ridiculously hilarious. It's not an 8 for me because, the story was, again, lackluster, pretty weak. They relied too much on multiverse and cameos. Even more than the story. The story was just kind of back burner compared to all the cameos, which is okay. It worked. And then the whole Wolverine story. I really did not like that scene and how it ended. Like, I wanted to be there and say, that was it. But 7.5 for me. As a Deadpool movie, like you said, this has been a pretty solid trilogy. The second one had its issues, but like for a trilogy and getting 3 movies pretty good, I'd rate it a 7.5 as a trilogy as a whole. Probably a 7. 7 solid through the whole trilogy. 7.5 maybe because the first movie is pretty damn good. But that's where I sit on it.
That's fair. If I was rating the trilogy on the whole, I'd probably agree about a 7.
Yeah.
You know, it's not perfect, it's not amazing, but it's pretty fucking good.
It's pretty fucking good.
Fucking good, as Deadpool would probably say, reviewing his own shit. And basically that brings us to the end of our episode.
It was a long one this time.
Yeah, we went a little long, but you know, it'll probably be a mixed bag when we do these episodes, really depending on what we're talking about and how in the moment we are. But we're happy to have you here along for the ride with us, everyone, especially at that milestone of now 5 episodes.
Oh, damn.
And we're definitely going to keep that momentum going. And one more time, I just wanted to throw out the disclaimer of, Rex and I are not aiming to offend anybody. We're just 2 dudes that try to make people laugh and say whatever's on our minds that may or may not be funny. If you laugh, you laugh. If you don't, you don't.
Bitch.
We can't be ourselves, though, if we restrict every little thing we're going to say. But, as a student or learner of the Kevin Smith Tarantino realm of bullshit, I say some pretty off-the-wall shit. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Get your big boy ear muffins on.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, next couple of weeks, we're going to be going over some stuff. We mentioned David Fincher. He's coming up. We're also going to touch on The Devil Wears Prada, a band that we both have liked for a lot of years and have recently kind of fallen out of our listening schedule. And
bringing it back.
Got to bring it back, Got to bring that motherfucking shit back. Ooh. So with that, we'll be signing off. And once again, deepdive85@outlook.com is the email address. If you want to hit us with anything, love, hate, whatever you want us to spew.
Especially the hate.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's been a great episode with you guys once again. And my name is Rex.
And this is your boy, Crack.
We'll talk to you real soon.
Absolutely. Have a good week, guys.